From the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning and welcome to the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm Stacy Smith. On Friday, people who live in Ohio's economically challenged Mahoning Valley near Youngstown wore the color blue for True Blue Friday. They were showing their solidarity with the workers who lost their jobs when General Motors shut down its Lordstown assembly plant, which manufactured the Chevy Cruze. Blue also symbolized the mood of the people in the Mahoning Valley. As Dean Reynolds reports, it is the latest blow to an area that never recovered from the loss of thousands of steel manufacturing jobs in the 1980s.
Yeah, the last drive-in was kind of bittersweet. I mean, what do you do from here? This may be the last time I pull up and park in this spot.
Aaron Applegate has worked at the for 11 years. Today was his last shift.
A little worried.
A little worried?
A lot worried.
In GM speak, Lordstown has been unallocated, meaning the Chevy Cruze that rolls off the line this week is the last car they're making here. The last of 16 million vehicles since it opened in 1966, and it's the largest of the 4 plants in the U.S. where GM plans to stop production this year. More than 3,300 hourly workers will be laid off indefinitely. That's 7% of GM's approximately 50,000 hourly employees nationwide. The cuts come as the automaker is reporting a near record $12 billion profit last year.
Are you bitter?
Oh, yeah.
Aaron brought his wife, Jean Ann, and his 4 children here 11 years ago after his employer in Indiana shut down.
I'm definitely, parts of me are very bitter. What makes you bitter is the fact that they're making profit year after year after year now, and we're not seeing that back. It's not as simple as a number.
But GM employees are a number because they don't care. I mean, you're replaceable.
GM is offering some workers transfers to other plants, and Applegate can apply, but it's complicated. His children include 13-year-old Austin, who has cerebral palsy, needs special care, and is slated for spinal surgery at the end of the month. GM health insurance is key.
With my youngest son, he needs that.
He has great nurses that have been with him for years, that know him, that know how to treat his seizures.
We wanted to know what they would tell GM CEO Mary Barra, whose ordered cuts come in response to market demand for big trucks and SUVs.
For her to think that she can play God and do whatever she wants to do with any GM family is wrong. I love living here. The friends, the neighbors, a community that I can call whenever anything goes on with that little, and they're here. And it is amazing, and I don't want to leave it. I don't want to.
Today at the plant, Aaron was bolting brackets and finishing the trim just like every other day. But this wasn't every other day.
What was it like in there?
Very emotional. When that last car pulled up and I had to go do my job on that.
Tough.
Yeah. I mean, there's still hope that you're still going to see some of your coworkers. But,
Right. But the group as it was is probably going to
yeah.
split up now.
Yeah. It's hard to even fathom that I'm not going to be coming back tomorrow.
Dean Reynolds, CBS News, Lordstown, Ohio.
Sunday Edition. What is the state of manufacturing in America, a country that made its fortune in glass, iron, and steel? Later in the program, we will talk about a new kind of manufacturing and what that could mean for the workforce. We begin with the story of the closing of General Motors' Lordstown plant near Youngstown, Ohio, and its ripple effect on the community. We welcome back Dr. Todd Porter, professor and chair of the Department of Economics at Youngstown State University. Sally Stapleton, the managing editor of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, joins us for this morning's discussion as well. Professor, thanks for coming back on the KDPG Sunday Edition. Good to have you here. You were on before when General Motors made its announcement that Lordstown was one of 5 plants that it was going to close. Give us some numbers of the impact that this has in the area, in the Mahoning Valley.
Okay. So the last shift for Lordstown was about 1,600 employees. Typically, you assume with a manufacturing plant a multiplier effect of about 3. And then you have to take into account the second shift that was laid off earlier in the year. guesstimates put it at somewhere in the neighborhood of 9,000 to 8,000 jobs that will ultimately be lost in the metropolitan area. We're looking at a labor force of around 220,000 for the metropolitan area, so 4 percentage points of unemployment, basically.
Well, let's go back to this. When we're talking about perhaps 9,000 people losing their, no longer having a job,
right?
And you say this is a multiplier effect of 3. So you're saying that for every worker that lost their job at the Lordstown plant, 3 other people in the Mahoning Valley are losing their jobs. What kind of jobs are going to be going away?
Well, all kinds of jobs. I mean, actually on the show, like a week later, it was almost like the paper was showing the dominoes falling, because you had Mercy Health canceling a major expansion project where they were going to build a new hospital. You had one of the suppliers announce that they were closing, which meant another 600 jobs. So it really goes throughout the whole economy. I mean, the initial impact's going to be on suppliers to the plants, but it works really into every part of the community because you just simply have less money flowing into the community. So healthcare is going to be affected. Ultimately, schools are going to be affected through reductions in assessed value. There's a whole, it trickles through really everything.
Restaurants, whatever it might be.
Restaurants,
yeah. Okay.
They've called this an unallocated plant now, meaning that no cars are going to be built there at this point. But there are workers that still believe it's possible if they just hang in there and scrimp up until, I believe, the fall, that something could return. The Post-Gazette reporter Anya Sustek called it unallocated purgatory. Talk a little bit about that, and is there hope for workers, or do they truly need to pivot right now?
Well, obviously I don't have any more inside information than anyone else does. But I think what you can say is that we've seen the automobile market shift towards SUVs and larger vehicles. And the Lordstown plant was always built for small cars. And so I think the big challenge would be, would anyone find it profitable to take a plant that's going to be producing small cars, which is not what the market seems to want right now with low gas prices, people moving to SUVs and things like that, and being able to make that plant profitable. I think the odds are not good.
I mentioned coming into the interview with you that the valley has yet to recover, or never did recover from the steel industry. How large was manufacturing in the Mahoning Valley at its peak? Okay. Well, the big crisis really was at the end of the 1970s. So from the late 70s to the early 80s, the area lost approximately 50,000 jobs. Okay, so what's really bad, but think about 5 times. It's catastrophic.
Right. And when I came there in '84, you had huge number of houses being foreclosed on because people weren't able to pay their mortgages. Lots of businesses moving out. I mean, downtown was basically boarded up in the early '80s. And you had lots of people, coming back for training. Youngstown State really had a flood of laid off steel workers and their spouses as a result of people trying to survive.
Well, you say they came back and tried to do that. Do you anticipate the same sort of thing? How many of these workers do you anticipate will be able to move to another GM plant? I mean, some of them have been offered that possibility, right?
Right. My understanding is that actually most of the workers have been offered jobs in other places. I mean, the real trauma is more, uprooting the family and going somewhere else. I think people in the Mahoning Valley tend to be very loyal to that area. There's a lot of deep family roots, and so making those kind of changes are really emotionally wrenching, you know, for those individuals.
The governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine, conveyed a message to Valley officials, according to this one newspaper article from the Youngstown area, that the GM was looking actively for someone else to take over that plant. Have you heard anything about that?
No.
And you kind of indicated that the plant was really built to make small cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always made small cars throughout its 53-year history. So, you know, it was Chevy Vega, you know, and all the smaller models that the GM was producing typically came through that plant.
So if not General Motors and small cars being manufactured there, what happens next for the Mahoning Valley?
Well,
again, you say this is not as catastrophic as the previous time,
right?
But it could be almost as bad, because
right.
when you start to shrink everything, and then it has the same impact.
Right. Well, I think, you know, the striking thing when you look at jobs in the Mahoning Valley is that we really have never been on an upward growth path, you know, for the last 30 years. So, you know, if you look at the period prior to 2008 and the Great Recession, we were averaging about 260,000 jobs in the area. And it was one of the most unusual graphs I've seen in terms of employment, because it was almost a horizontal line. 2008 hits, we dropped down to about 220,000 jobs, 230,000 jobs, and again, it's kind of like a straight line. So this is you know, going to be another step down. You know, hopefully at some point we'll start to see some growth, but we haven't had for a very long time. Now, having said that, you know, I would want to say that there are a number of things going on that are quite positive. You know, so for example, TJ Maxx is building a distribution center which is going to employ 1,000 people, actually in Lordstown. Those jobs aren't nearly as well paying as the jobs that are being lost at the Lordstown plant. You know, downtown Youngstown is now actually really gotten into quite an impressive revival, you know, with a new hotel and new restaurants and so forth. So in some ways, I think what's happened is that, you know, the community has adjusted downward to the number of jobs that are available. And it's actually, you know, a really pleasant place to live in a lot of ways, but the employment base is something that, you know, keeps shrinking.
But I was taken with your example of TJ Maxx. In that retail is another industry that's been hit terrifically hard.
Mm-hmm.
So one would assume that could possibly not be a long-term.
Well, no, this is a distribution center.
Exactly, but for TJ Maxx.
Right. Well, I think, you know, they're coming in and building a plant from the ground up, so I think that means that they view it as a long-term commitment. So.
Well, we are going to take a quick break here, and when the KDPG Sunday Edition continues, we will be joined by Dr. Maria Kelovich, Dean of the Robert Morris University School of Engineering, Mathematics, and Science, and we'll take a look at a different kind of manufacturing that is developing in the city of Pittsburgh. It's coming up.